All right, so Chris, before we get into the law firm and everything you've been building up to now, I really want to hear back about the beginning. And can you share some experiences that led you to want to start a law firm?
Yeah, so I have a bit of an unconventional story. I never thought about being a lawyer. I never knew any lawyers growing up. Lawyers seem to be in a different stratosphere than I would ever imagine to be in. And so I started to get serious about school and then got into law school and I got out, I couldn't get a job. And Tyson, I didn't network in college. I just focused so much on academics, not really the relationship part as much. And so I found myself, I couldn't get a job. I was sort of screwed. So I hung a shingle. And this is about 20 years ago. So that's all I've ever known is entrepreneurship and the law. And thankfully things have worked out. But I sort of stumbled, into entrepreneurship, which I think a lot, I can say from my experience, sometimes it's very common, right? I see that a lot is we don't always plan this in law school. Sometimes we just have to sort of figure stuff out and we end up hanging a shingle if we're crazy enough. So that's been generally my crazy path in the
Y-
law.
Yeah, the majority of people that stumble in, I'd say they end up accidentally building a law firm that is, it's kind of bolted together with different things and it's
Yeah.
not super efficient. And it sounds like you might have kind of turned the corner from that. And, so at what point did you turn that corner or did you build something at the beginning that you thought was, oh, this is going to work out?
No, I mean, I'm going back to, I got out of law school in 2004. The business of law was not even a term I've ever heard. It wasn't really talked about as this is a practice of law. It's not a business. And so I sort of took that as truth. And so Tyson, for about 10 to 15 years, I'll admit, I was kind of like a hack. It wasn't a business, hair was on fire. Thankfully, never got sued. Never had any real quagmires, but skating close as you get busier and busier. Do you know a guy named Ben Glass? Great
Yeah, I love
legal.
Ben. Ben's fantastic. And his son Brian is awesome too.
They're both awesome. One day I was having a terrible day. I decided not to go to the office. I was just at a tough point. I was getting burnt out. My wife was like, "What are you doing home? Why are you at work?" She said, "You never take days off." I said, "I have to take a day off." I was just having a very stressful day, and I Googled, I got to get to a conference. I got to get out of my world here in Boston. I got to get outside. So I decided to go to a Ben Glass conference. That was like 6, 7 years ago. That was a that was like a launch to go in a totally separate direction. So I would encourage the audience, I know you're into conferences and events, you put on events. I think the practitioner who's looking to grow has got to get out of the freaking office and grow. Because I had a good practice, super, super, super low seven-figure practice, but it was really me and an assistant. It was like, this isn't sustainable. And so I'm sort of like a late bloomer. So you asked me, did I have it figured out being hell no, right? It's always, a work in progress, but learn from my mistakes. Get started earlier. If you're in law school, if you might go to law school, develop relationships, network. But some of us have success later, and I found traction later, kind of mid-career, 20 years in. So that's been my path of stumbling, stumbling, failing, and then finally finding my zone, which is like having conversations like this with you. It's like talking about this stuff and geeking out. I love this stuff. But that's been my kind of, again, odd path in this profession.
Well, other than the pattern interrupt of getting out of the office, what was it? What was it at that conference that really shifted your mindset?
I mean, I didn't so many things. It was a fire hose. It was like, wow, mindset. Never really heard that term used in law. We don't talk like that. Time management. What's that? Delegation. Just, you know, drinking from a fire hose and realizing that, oh crap, this makes sense to me. This resonates with me. Like I can jive with this. Like, Ben Glass is just talking about being an authority, like writing a book, doing a newsletter, cultivating a tribe. I was like, I can get with that. Like that's cool. I can really, and so that resonated with me. But whatever the room is you should be in, like I found comfort in that room and joined his mastermind, joined other masterminds. It kind of leveled up as we should, right? As we advance forward. That was a turning point of like being it. I think what I took from Ben Glass Tyson, being a different lawyer. His term is like a renegade lawyer. I just like doing stuff differently and not being a vanilla lawyer, right? Not being that scary, intimidating lawyer to the general public, being like an approachable person who just gets on clients' levels and like meets them where they are. that's what I learned is just like doing things differently and having a, I mean, I go on and on. I just so many lessons I took from him, but you can actually be a happy lawyer. There's such a thing. And I never really like thought that was totally realistic, to be honest with you, until I sort of like a caveman discovering fire.
Yeah. Well, I remember whenever I started practicing, it was about 2010 or it was 2010, and it seemed like there was just a couple of experts out there, and
Yeah,
I would consider Ben one of those experts, right? Where like a true expert, right? He's practicing, but he's also he knows what he's talking about when it comes to the business side of things and the marketing side of things. But there seems to have been an explosion since then of experts, and I
totally.
wonder, like, what is your advice on filtering through all of the noise? Because there's a lot of bad advice that I see, and how do
Yeah.
you filter through all that?
Really good question. There's definitely proliferation, right? There's so much out there to choose from. I think like there has to be a fit. Like I think Ben's great. Ben's probably not great for every single lawyer out there, and he doesn't want to be. That's part of I learned from him. You don't want to be everybody's lawyer. Like you only want to attract a small slice of raving fans who will refer and make your life better, enrich you. So I would encourage you to, everyone, wants to take your money. You have to be careful where you spend your next dollar as you invest in yourself. But you can't go wrong with going out of your comfort zone and finding a good room, a conference, mastermind, but just finding one that kind of speaks to you because they're all different flavors, right? I know this guy Arjan Robbins out in Florida. He and Ben Glass, polar opposites. Ken Hardison, a totally different guy than those guys. There's so many different flavors out there, but it's really incumbent upon the lawyer looking to grow to find that right fit. And if it's working, fantastic. If not, go to a different room, find a different, expert to learn from. But there's no
Yeah.
shortage. You're so right. Almost too much.